Hey everyone, welcome back to my Georgia garden. We just got home from vacation. We were down in Hilton Head, South Carolina. That is on the coast near Savannah, Georgia. And we were just down there for our annual family summer vacation, and it was a whole lot of fun. And as I look around the garden this evening, everything looks great. I have sunflowers blooming, hydrangeas, Supertunia, Vista bubblegums, all the things are blooming, and seems like everything is thriving as well. It turned out that our house received a lot of rain while we were away, which was great, so I didn't have to worry about watering. I think the garden did appreciate that very much because I have seen a ton of growth in just 1 week's time. So excited to show you all this and what is currently thriving here in my Georgia garden in early June. I want to show you all a few clips from how this week got started, and then we will end back here in the garden for a little mini garden tour. When I left, these summer Jewel salvias were little babies, and now look at them. They're huge. They're a couple feet tall, have tons of blooms on them. This ended up being a red variety. So this is Summer Jewel's Red Salvia. It's one of my favorites. I love these pinky red flowers. They do have a little hint of pink on them up close. I don't know if the camera's going to pick up on that, but they are just so pretty. I just love these. You can see them from a distance. The hummingbirds love them, the bees love them, and they're just great. I'm so excited that these came up this year. They're right on the edge of the bed here, and I'm just gonna leave them next to this hydrangea. So I think they'll be fine, because this hydrangea, it will stay on the smaller side. So I'm just gonna leave them, see how they do. And the hummingbirds love them, the bees love them, all the pollinators love them. They're just really great plants for your garden. You can come in every few weeks and do a little bit of deadheading on these to remove these spent flowers if you want, and they will just continue blooming all summer long into fall until your first frost. And if you're lucky, you might get a few new seedlings in your yard each spring. Here's the new annual perennial border that I've been working on at the bottom of my slope garden. And I showed this off a couple times in recent videos, and so I just wanted to give a quick update. On what this area is looking like in early June. So one thing to note is that my Salvia greggis have gone out of bloom a little bit. They tend to bloom a little bit less once the heat starts to kick in. And that's okay, because they will still get some sporadic blooms throughout the summer, just not as heavy as the spring and fall blooms. And then on either side of those, I do have a couple other things blooming. I do have at least one happy daisy in my garden. Isn't that pretty? I tend to have trouble with daisies in our Georgia red clay. They just don't like to sit in water, and so they will eventually just rot and wither away. So this one I've actually had in the ground for a few years, and it is a little bit of a drier spot, especially next to these viburnums. These Walter's viburnums next to it tend to take, I think, a lot of the water from this area. They are well rooted into this garden, and you can actually see they've actually put up a few shoots actually right next to this plant here. These Walter's viburnums tend to soak up a lot of the water in this area, so all these plants need to be drought tolerant and be able to handle the drier conditions. So with that being said, you'll see that my other plantings in the area include yarrow, which I do have one blooming right now. I haven't had the best luck with yarrow. I do want to try it in a few other areas of my garden, but it tends to also like drier soils. So I do have 3 yarrows planted here with a few annual bidens next to a chartreuse on the loose nepeta. This one is, as its name would suggest, a chartreuse foliage nepeta with purple flowers during the summer. Very pretty. And this one is newer in the garden, so it's not huge yet, but I do have one out in my front garden that's a lot bigger, and I'm hoping that this one gets a lot bigger as well. Drops of Jupiter Oregano, also from Proven Winners. I do have a few buds on this one, so I'm excited to see this one bloom for the first time this summer. This is Purple Pixie Loropetalum from Southern Living. These are pretty delicate plants, I will say. I bought these in small pots and the branches will break easily, but it seems like once they get established, they are a little bit more durable. So I'm excited about how this one is doing. I love this purple foliage, especially next to the bright green foliage of this oregano here. The Cool Jazz Petunia has really spread out. This is one plant. It looks really great, doing really well here in early June next to this nepeta, also from Proven Winners. I think that combination's really pretty. This is an Echinacea popping up behind it. Should be a yellow variety, but I know I planted yellow ones here. So this one is now pink, I guess. Still beautiful, just unexpected. Looks pretty great. It's possible that one is now a seed from another one in my garden. And then I also have solidago here. This is a dwarf variety. It is now blooming bright yellow, very pretty. It's very petite. You can really fit this into any place in your garden. I love it. It goes with all the colors here. I think it goes well with all the colors here, whether you want cool or warm. Just looks really great. My bidens are still looking wonderful. This is probably the most surprising plant in my garden this season. I think I'm going to be obsessed with this plant going forward. It is just so striking, so beautiful. I love the habit. It looks like coreopsis, but it's an annual bidens, doesn't stop blooming. And it looks absolutely amazing mixed in with all these nepeta. I just love it. This is the newest section of the border that I planted not too long ago. I added a few of the white salvias from Proven Winners. These are a pretty new variety. I think they were introduced last year. So this is their first season in the ground. I have some other ones on the other side of the slope that are a lot bigger than this. They are sold as annuals, but they are perennial for me here in Zone 8A, Georgia. So I love these. These will get big and bushy throughout the next couple of seasons. And then behind it, I have a red dahlia. This one is also new to my garden this spring. It's really pretty. And then along the border, I did plant some Luscious Grape Lantana from Proven Winners. I really like this color. I'm really interested to see how this one does this season. I believe it is an annual variety, so I will have to replant it next year if I do like it. To the right, I have an interesting combination here. It's snapdragons and an Osteospermum. I have not seen this one bloom yet, so I'm so excited. Look at these flowers. They are so vibrant. This is the first time I had seen this variety in the garden center. I don't remember the name, but it is just gorgeous. I love these colors. I may have to plant more of these next year. I'm going to keep this on my list for sure. And around them, I actually did a drift of snapdragons. In the South, I typically plant my snapdragons in the fall in October with my violas and pansies. The pansies and violas will bloom all winter through early spring, and then they start to die out once the heat really ramps up later in spring and early summer. The snapdragons I always hoped would bloom during a similar time, or at least during the early spring, but they never have done that for me. And they always bloom here in the summer. I actually have some old photos of these blooming in the middle of August. And they're just gorgeous. I love these flowers, and the bees will visit them as well. And they're just starting to bud up. You can see all the buds here. So I'm really interested to see how these do. I've never planted them this time of year and enjoyed them really through the summer. I always end up changing these out for summer annuals. I'm really excited to try something new and see if these can perform well for me during the heat of the summer. These are perennial for me here in Zone 8A. They will come back year to year. They develop a pretty strong root system, which is great. I do think a couple of these may have gotten too wet while we were away. We had a lot of heavy rain during the first couple days that we were gone, and you can see that a few of these branches have shriveled up. I can come in here and just cut these out. They probably received too much water. It doesn't feel too bad right now, so I think this did happen about a week ago. So I can come in here, take these out, and just keep an eye on this one, make sure it's not too wet. The water does drain through this area here. It comes down from our neighbor's property and trickles down here, and then eventually comes out into the yard somewhere in this area. So I do need to keep an eye on the water here, but it looks like most of them are doing pretty well besides just a little portion of this plant. And then I do have a little bit of dieback on this one as well. So, but the others seem to be doing really well. This one is gorgeous. Look at that. I love those flowers, so pretty. And then I added some vincas as well. I just had a few extras. So I will just dot these throughout my garden. Before I move up the slope, I wanted to show you guys this area here where I planted the milkweed a few weeks ago. You may remember a video that I posted maybe a month ago where I added swamp milkweed to the garden. So this is how it's doing. Looks great. And we had removed a butterfly weed from this area thinking that it had milkweed yellows, and we actually have a little bit coming back. It's hard to remove milkweed because it does have tubers underneath the ground. So you will see that I have some of that coming back here and here. Can you see that there? So I will probably need to come back and remove these since we suspected the milkweed yellows in the original plant. And then above it is this Queen Nectarine Agastache from Proven Winners. This is such an amazing plant, you guys. I've had it in the ground for at least 3 years and it has grown so much. It is gorgeous. I mean, look at these flowers. Those peach flowers with the magenta calyx. Isn't that gorgeous? I love this plant so much. It's beautiful, thriving. I really don't know what I did to make this plant so happy. It's actually planted next to our downspout, which is kind of interesting because these plants don't need a whole lot of water. I also have one of the Drops of Jupiter oregano here, which is starting to really splay out and get big. Has a few buds on it as well. This is a threadleaf coreopsis. I love this plant and it's actually never been this big. I'm really excited. I actually relocated it. I pushed it out to the edge of the bed because it was overcrowded, and now it gets the most beautiful flowers during summer. It's all budded up, so we'll start to see a lot more of these over the next few weeks. This is another coreopsis variety that I just planted this spring. A little bit different colored flower on these. They have hints of yellow and pink. Beautiful. This one has a tighter, more compact habit, as you can see. And I have a heuchera planted next to it. It is getting a little bit of burn from the morning sun, which is interesting. I thought that it would receive enough shade that I could put it here, but I guess I'll need to keep an eye on this later this summer. I just planted this earlier in the late winter. So I believe this variety is Evening Gown from Proven Winners, and it does get shaded from my tea olive in the afternoon. So it's a really great variety. I'll just have to keep an eye on it this summer to make sure that it's not in too much sun. One last plant before I move up the slope. This is the Butterfly Towers butterfly bush from Southern Living. I love this plant so much, and all the pollinators love it as well. They don't seem to mind that the flowers are white. This is such a rock star in the garden. It blooms nonstop until frost. So pretty. I see hummingbirds and pollinators on this all day. It's just beginning to get started. It just started blooming, and it'll probably tack on a few more feet during the growing season. Last year, I want to say it was about 7 feet tall, and it gets about 3 to 4 feet wide. I love the tall, narrow habit. It's such a great one for your southern gardens. I will occasionally see a Japanese beetle on them. Look at that. They return each June. I always deal with Japanese beetles during the month of June. Thankfully, they won't do any damage to this one. One more thing before I move up the slope. I did make a decision to come in here and remove 2 echinaceas. I had 2 red ones planted here and here. When we got back last night, I noticed that the flowers were covered in strange growth, and I was worried that that could be Aster yellows, since we had already suspected milkweed yellows on the other side of the garden. Maybe it's just something we're dealing with this spring. I'll be honest, I don't have experience with Aster yellows and milkweed yellows in my garden, and so I will not call myself an expert in identifying the disease. So when I see something that just looks abnormal, I just make the decision to go ahead and remove it from my garden just to be safe, because there's no cure for those diseases anyway, and I definitely don't want them to spread to other areas of my garden. With the milkweed yellows, at least it's specific to one plant. But with Aster yellows, there are so many plants that can be affected by that disease, and it is spread by leafhopper insects. I can't control what those insects land on, but I can control what I do when I see those symptoms. These plants may or may not have been affected. It was in the early stages, so I felt like it was safest to remove them. I can easily plant them with something else. I might even choose a different color, because red is not really the best color with this bright pink echinacea, which is my favorite, by the way. There's a chance it was a mite because the foliage was still in pretty good shape, but since it was in the early stages, again, it was just safest to remove it, and I can easily replace some echinaceas here in this spot over the next couple of weeks. On the brighter side, look at this one. Isn't this beautiful? This has become my favorite coneflower in my garden. It is so beautiful. It actually gets bigger and better every year, which I'm not used to with our clay soils, but this one has just been wonderful. It just continues to bloom and get better and better every year. As I start walking up the slope, you'll see that my Summerific Hibiscus are starting to get big. They've put on quite a bit of growth over the past week or two. Looking great. Loropetalum, looking wonderful. That is a really big bee. We'll try not to get in his way. This is another Summerific Hibiscus. Look at this sunflower. Isn't that pretty? We use a no-mess blend birdseed, but this year for some reason we ended up with quite a few sunflower seedlings, and I just let them grow up. Here's an Arctic Fire dogwood, looking great. Summerific Hibiscus. These are my Bobo Hydrangeas. They are huge this year. Excited to see these are about to bloom. Of course, the Japanese beetles starting to pop out. See a few of them on these plants as well. This is Niagara Falls Panicum grass, probably one of my favorite switchgrass varieties. I love the color and the texture, and these do get huge. Miss Lemon Abelia. I grew these black-eyed Susans from seed last summer, and then I overwintered them and planted them in the ground this spring. The seeds were about 2 years old, so I wasn't sure what would come up, but they're definitely looking great. I'm definitely glad I decided to use those old seeds. Beautiful. This is pineapple sage that I planted earlier this spring, and it has grown so much. I put it in as like a little quart pot, I think. Look at this. Isn't that beautiful? I love what that adds to the garden. That's so pretty. I probably need more of those up here. And it looks really great next to this purple fountain grass. I love that combination. More coreopsis. And you'll see a lot of our native passion vine. It's growing back behind our fence and along the slope here as well. I use this as a ground cover and to support the Fritillary butterflies. Our native passion vine is a host plant for Fritillary butterflies. I let this grow up on my slope throughout the summer, and then it will help produce hundreds of Fritillary butterflies throughout the growing season. Here's a close-up of the flowers. Isn't that really pretty? So cool looking. It's so unique. All right, so that's all I have for today. I hope you loved this short garden update, and I will be back with more garden updates later this week. Have a great day. Bye, guys.